You're listening to the Sisters-in-Law podcast, a faith-based podcast that spotlights Black women who replace silence with storytelling around pregnancy and infant loss and infertility. Black women experience miscarriage and stillbirth 4 to 5 times more likely than white women, according to the NIH and CDC. Whether you've experienced a miscarriage, infant loss, stillbirth, are trying to conceive, or have an infertility diagnosis, you will learn about resources and strategies to heal, gain clarity, peace, hope, and find an empowering path forward after loss. I'm your host, Erica M. McAfee, and you will hear me interview sisters-in-law who have healed from such a painful and traumatic experience by sharing their testimonies and stories to inspire and help others turn their pain into their purpose. Now let's get started. Welcome to episode 218 of the Sisters-in-Law podcast. Do you know what a miscarriage is? A missed or silent miscarriage is one where the baby has died or not developed, but has not been physically miscarried. In many cases, there has been no sign that anything was wrong, so the news can come as a complete shock. Today's guest experienced a miscarriage with twins after having 3 daughters. Sibyl Lilly has 6 children here on earth and 4 angels in heaven. After losing her twins to a miscarriage, she became pregnant with a boy who was stillborn at 32 weeks. She was broken, angry, sad, and felt guilty as her faith was pushed to the limits. In this episode, Sibyl shares how she conceived again and how her rainbow baby boy, after that pregnancy, she suffered another miscarriage and then went on to having her final 2 rainbow twin girls. This episode is for you to listen to if you've ever experienced a miscarriage or stillbirth. This episode is for you to listen to on what it means to stay resilient on the journey to motherhood. Here is Sibyl Lilly. Well, welcome, Sibyl, to the podcast. I love to begin my podcast with you just sharing a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Okay, well, I am 38, about to be 39 now. I've been married for almost 15 years. I'm the mother of 6 children here on earth. I homeschool, so my house is very crazy and loud and busy. I love to bake. I love to read, though I don't have as much time to do that now. It's always strange talking about myself. I guess I'm not used to doing that, honestly. That's pretty much me.
Awesome. 6 beautiful babies here on earth, but I know that you have babies in heaven. So let's talk about that.
Okay. Well, honestly, for my husband and I, being pregnant has always been pretty easy. We got married in 2006, and then we welcomed our oldest daughter in 2007, a second daughter in 2009, and then a third daughter in 2010. And all of my pregnancies were easy. Everyone was full term. I don't know. It was, and I enjoyed being pregnant. For my youngest, turn 2, we found out that we were pregnant again. This is kind of where our lost story starts. When I found out that we were pregnant with number 4, honestly, I cried, sobbed, cried. And not because we didn't want another child, because I love being a mom, but I cried because I was ashamed, and I was embarrassed. A lot of the times when a couple gets married and they welcome, their first child, everyone's excited, and the second child, everyone's excited. When you get to the third, people aren't quite as excited. And with the 4th there, I was embarrassed to tell friends and ashamed to tell my parents because I don't know. I was honestly embarrassed about my fertility. So husband, he was always good to go. And so, I came around, and around 7-ish weeks, my doctor got me in for an ultrasound. And because I had never, pregnancies had been easy, ultrasounds were kind of new that early. And when we went in, they told us that they saw, I was pregnant, that they saw 2 yolk sacs and 2 fetal poles, and I was about 7 weeks, but there were no heartbeats, and they suggested we come back in a couple of weeks. And so we left, thinking, oh, everything's all good. I mean, there's, we were just excited there were 2 yolk sacs and 2 fetal poles. We're about to have twins. And so a couple weeks later, we did go back in for an ultrasound, and this time they sent us to an outside ultrasound facility where they didn't give us any information. And it was actually our wedding anniversary that day too. So we were celebrating, and the doctor gave us a call and told us that, there had been no growth over the past, 3 weeks, no heartbeats still. The sac, the gestational sac, had actually started to shrink a little bit, and that the pregnancy wasn't viable. And so they kind of gave us our options, if we wanted to just wait, take a pill, get a DNC. And we went ahead and scheduled our DNC for the next day, which was November the 13th. I can honestly say we lost them. I didn't really deal with the loss. On the outside, I said, trust God, and this is his plan, and everything will be better next time. Inside, I was very much ashamed that I cried, that I was embarrassed, that I had taken my fertility for granted. Like, I was a mess inside, but I put on a good, strong face and kept pushing. About 4 months later, we found out that we were pregnant again, then for the 5th time. And I didn't cry. I was excited, and I said, I'm not going to let anybody take any joy here. We're going to celebrate every moment and love it. And the pregnancy, again, was like, my first 3 smooth. At 15 weeks, we went in and found out that we were having our first little boy. So, we were over the moon, ecstatic. It was just so big and exciting, and, easy. It was an easy pregnancy. September 17th of 2013 rolled around. The day was like a normal day, except, I didn't feel my son move much. And I called the doctor, and they said, he's running out of space. That's probably why he's not moving. Lay on your left side, drink some juice, you'll get him going. And I did that. And by the evening, I still haven't felt him, but, I'm still thinking he's gotten big. There's not much space, but they suggested that I go into labor and delivery. And honestly, I thought everything was fine. So I went to labor and delivery. Well, first I cooked dinner for my 3 kids. Mother-in-law come over and left to the hospital alone with just the clothes on my back, because I knew they were just going to check me out and send us home. And that was not the case. When I arrived there, they took me up to labor and delivery, and they started to hook the bands, around my belly to find heartbeats. And I noticed immediately that the nurse was not finding a heartbeat. You could see the look on her face. And I said to her, he's gone, isn't he? And she kind of, well, let's just get your doctor. But you know what? I knew when she said that. And the doctor came so quickly. She pulled up the ultrasound, and there he was, as still as can be. And I cried and cried. I devastated, and I was there alone. My first big thought was, how do I tell my husband now and tell him that our son has died? Like, how am I supposed to do that? Honestly, I don't remember how I did. He got to the hospital, but a lot else is just a blur. And so then I was induced and delivered him the next day, September 18th, a little after 1 p.m. And he was the most beautiful boy I have ever seen. And so shortly thereafter, 10 months later, I did fall pregnant again. But
Yeah, no, I'm listening and I'm taking it all in as you're sharing. And I just think that, for obviously the hardest part, especially as you go through this journey, is that you still have to go back home and be mom to other kids. So tell us really, because you have older
Right.
children at this point, how did you go back home after you had your miscarriage with your twins and then the stillbirth and explain to your older children exactly what happened to mom, but still go back and be mom? Because mom's not the same, So share with us how that process
Right.
worked for you all. Mm-hmm.
Um, when we lost the twins, as I said, I didn't really take any time to deal with my feelings. So really, I just kept it pushing as if, I don't know, nothing happened, I guess. With our son, who we did name Anthony Jr., AJ, it, we, because our oldest, I believe she was 7 at the time, she knew, they knew that I was pregnant. And it was, I don't know, we went home, my husband and I, and sat with them and explained to them, kind of what has happened and why their little brother wasn't going to get to come home. And I think for the first couple of weeks, I was in autopilot. So I was there physically, but not there emotionally at all. And I was homeschooling at the time. So I think I was just going through the motions of everything, but still keeping the lines of communication open, because it was super important, because my oldest especially was attached to the pregnancy and the idea that she was having a brother, that she was allowed to talk about how she felt, or any questions that she had. And then also she was able to see me, I don't know, kind of grieving, and talking about him or what we might have thought life was going to look like. I thought that was important. So really, really, we just kept everything open. We talked about AJ a lot, and was just very open about my emotions, because I am an emotional person. Anyway, my husband is more reserved, so I don't know. It's when I think back over the time, it's truly amazing just how God was in it, was in the family, was in our energy, because otherwise we would have been a total broken mess there at home.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so happy that you shared that, because I think that people, especially for moms who homeschool, I think a lot of moms during this pandemic have gotten a taste of what that's like. And for those who did it, before pre-pandemic, it's still a lot to go back to, especially as you're grieving. So at some point you tried again and you got pregnant again. Can you continue on with your story?
Yeah, I did. So about 10 months later, we did get pregnant again. And I actually shared the pregnancy news very, very early. I'd say by 6 weeks, because we had a loss before and then lost AJ. I thought it was important to celebrate every moment of his life, of the life that we'd have, regardless of how short our time might be together. So I shared and I took pictures and all from the beginning, and we prayed and enlisted, prayer warriors, our church, our family, our friends, just to be praying over this pregnancy, trusting that however it went, whether, we brought home a baby or not, that in the process, God would be glorified. So that pregnancy was physically was an uneventful pregnancy. Things went smooth, and I did deliver him full term at 37 weeks. It was another son, our second son, Eli. But emotionally, spiritually, that pregnancy was tough. Though I have a pretty strong relationship with God, and my faith is very important. I was still very scared. And when I say not necessarily scared that we were going to lose another child, but afraid of what or how it would affect me emotionally, if that makes sense. I think, through my process of grieving and all, and just connecting with God after we lost AJ, I was then thereafter and now very confident in God's plan for me, for our family, and just accepting which way things were going to go, if that makes sense. But I was afraid of just how emotionally we could handle, and even what that would make our faith look like, if something went wrong. I don't know. The pregnancy, it was very hard emotionally. And I was very vocal about our loss, and then our pregnancy, the rainbow. And I did get a lot of comments where people suggested that because I had a relationship with God and because I had faith, that I shouldn't be concerned, or I shouldn't have any fears. And that made it harder too. But it was really tough. But God did allow us to deliver our son. And then we did go on again to get pregnant again. I did have another miscarriage. And then we got pregnant one last time, to which we delivered a set of twins. And then that was in 2017. And then we closed the chapter on having children.
How was the pregnancy with your twins compared to your son, Eli? Was it the same? Did you have the same naysayers come and tell you that you should be strong in your faith during that pregnancy? Did you have the same fears or anxieties, especially since you had a miscarriage in between those two?
Honestly, that pregnancy was easier. And I think it was because there was a multiple pregnancy. So I was seen a lot more frequently. And I did invest in a Doppler. So I was kind of more on top of the situation. So I didn't have as much worry and fear with the last pregnancy.
Understood. I understood. One thing that I love about your story is that you kept persevering on and you kept moving on. And I would love for you to share more about just how your faith really played a role as you navigated through all of these losses, and then getting pregnant again, and then delivering again. It's a step out on faith and trusting God every step of the way. So could you share a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So when we lost AJ, I will say that all of the emotions and feelings that I had from our first loss came flooding in, allowing me to deal with that too. And I can say that I have always been a person that said, I have faith and I'm a Christian. And what I realized is, though those things were true, that things in my life have gone relatively well. Of course, some bad things have happened, but nothing to this magnitude. Like, I'd never been in a spot where my faith was tested so deeply. The first couple of weeks, like I said, I was on autopilot. And, it was almost as if what occurred, maybe disassociation, as though this didn't actually occur to me. I'd say about a month out is when I started to really dig in to what I was feeling. As I said, I had carried shame, because I had cried. I was ashamed of my fertility, and I was ashamed that I was ashamed of my fertility. And so I thought that maybe God was angry and punishing me. I felt that he had tricked me, because I honestly thought that if we got pregnant again, things were going to go well. I was angry, very, very angry. But at the same time, I still trusted him, if that makes sense. So My journey looked like digging into the Bible, like digging into the Bible and journaling constantly and just kind of finding the verses that spoke to, whatever it was that I was feeling in the moment. Like I'm brokenhearted and I'm crushed. And then I'm like, okay, well, let me find this here, in the Bible where it says that. And I'm like, okay, I'm in Second Corinthians, and I'm like, all of this has happened. God is still here. I'm not destroyed. I just made sure that every, I don't know, everything that I could point out that was wrong, I could go to the scripture and find where God was still there or how he could make it right. And what I found, or what we found as a family, is that God was here, and he was already here, but he became more real in our house than he had been our entire marriage, because I was digging into the word, and then my husband, then we got more involved into church, and connecting with people, not necessarily people that had lost, because I did find that was very difficult to find people that had that same experience. But all of this, just God was just alive here in ways that he hadn't been before. And after a couple of months, it was in December, I had felt a tug on my heart, because I said that it was hard to find other people that had experienced a loss such as ours. And I got on the internet, I got connected with a few organizations, but what I found was there wasn't much voice coming from someone that looked like me or that had children before their loss. And so I decided that I was going to blog about it and write about it. And I am the shower is my prayer closet. And so I cried out to God, and I was like, I've got the tug on my heart to do this, and I need you to use me. I need you to use AJ's death to bring you glory. And that's what I set out to do. And so I started to blog and be very vocal on Facebook about the loss, what this meant spiritually for me, how I was dealing, how God was here, how I felt like God might not be here, anything and everything that I was going through, because it was helping me to build my relationship with God, but also allowing, God's goodness to shine, for others to see, even when things were really, 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 really tough and really hard and very just crushing for us.
Oh, I absolutely love that you really found healing and being able to share your story that way and connect with people really who look like you, who could understand what you were going through. So I would love to talk about just really the other things you're doing, because I know that you are training to become a doula as well. So talk about what made you go that route of being able to serve families in that way.
Honestly, because when we went in to deliver my son, the hospital had very little information to give us. They couldn't give us expectations. They didn't suggest photos. We were there, already in the situation, and then not knowing what to expect or not knowing what we were able to do in that case, and then leaving the hospital. I don't know, there were things so much that we didn't know. And afterwards, and when I got onto Google and kind of as I searched for others with the same experience, I came across organizations that dealt with loss, that helped moms to walk the path and expect certain things or ask for certain things. And I was like, what? I was amazed this was even possible. So I did get hooked up with an organization called Still Birthday, and I shared my story with her. Her name is Heidi. And I looked into the doula program, and I was like, this is cool. I would love to be able to support women that are walking a path similar to mine, that need support. And I honestly wanted to be able to do it just out of the goodness of my heart, because I wish that someone would have been there to do that for me. And so I actually toyed with the idea of becoming a doula for a while, because I do have several children at home. I just didn't know how I could make it work. And so I did finally jump aboard and start the program in January of last year. So I am very, very close to finishing. I just have my final projects. And then I get to sit down and figure out how to make this look right in the real world. I know things are so different now with COVID. I'm not quite sure how to support in the virtual era, but I feel it's so important for us to talk about this and to have support, and to know that there are resources out there, that there are people out there that want to help, that want to sit with you, that want to come in and just hold the space. And I would love no more than to do that.
Yes, and I feel the exact same way, and it's the reason why I'm a doula as well. It is the greatest tool to the next level of your healing, to be able to support and help women usher in life. If they are ushering in their babies born, still to be able to support them through and navigate it through that journey has been such a pleasure. So I would love to talk about any tools or resources or the community that you mentioned earlier that was helpful for you, that really has helped you navigate this journey as a grieving mother, as a mother to babies in heaven, as well as babies here on earth. Share some of those tools with us.
The Bible being the number one, my number one resource. Also, there was a book it was a journal that I did, journal devotional called Grieving the Child. I never knew. I don't have the author right here in front of me, but I did complete that book maybe a month after our son was stillborn, and I highly, highly recommend it. I highly recommend sitting with it. It has great probing questions to make you think and kind of pull all that you might be holding in out, so that you can, if you're not comfortable saying it out loud, at least pouring it out onto the pages of the journal. I really recommend that one. I also read a book called Grieving God's Way by Margaret Brownlee that I did enjoy as well. As far as groups I connected with at that time, it was still birthday. I think he was born in 2013, so I think resources, there are so many more resources and organizations now than there were then, but I highly recommend Still Birthday. And then of course you're doing great work. Great work too. And I don't know, in just church family, that was super important. There were a few women there that I didn't know before our loss that I did connect with, and they came beside and prayed with me, still pray for me now. That was super important. It's so important to find your people, find some people that can be praying for you and praying with you. That is so important.
I completely agree that there's so many more opportunities and groups that are virtual, that are online now than there were back in because I lost my son in 2012.
13.
So yeah, you lost yours in 2013. So yeah, we were looking, we were searching back then.
Right.
Yeah, but there is so much more knowledge and resources out there now. So I'm thankful for you to share those information. So for those who are out there, we're still in this pandemic. It feels like we have the light at the end of the tunnel for many of us. But a lot of places around the world are still locked down, So I would love for you to really share just encouraging words as people navigate this journey, because still people are limited in hospitals if they're giving birth and they're pregnant after loss, or, many people may be navigating infertility during this season. What encouraging words can you leave with our listeners?
Wow, that's big. I would say that, you're not alone in this walk, in this journey, at all. There are so many of us that are walking here too, but also, God is there. He's here. And I know that it's sometimes hard to see him or feel his presence when you're in the midst of sadness and heartbreak, but he is there and he is good. Also, don't lose hope. I've shared my story, and I have my ending, but you'll have your ending too, and it might not look exactly like my ending, how things have gone for me, but God is here and he's got a good plan for you. A good plan, always so good. So don't lose hope, and find yourself a group or just a few good people, to pray with you, to pray for you, and to talk to. Talk, use your voice. There's nothing to be ashamed about, or embarrassed about. Speak your truth and say your baby's name, whatever that name is. Shout it from the rooftop, say it as many times as you'd like, forever and ever and ever. I guess that sums it up.
Yes. So where can our listeners connect with you after this episode? Share your socials with us.
Oh, okay. You can find me on Instagram. I'm ssheffy27 there. And then you can find me on Facebook, Sibyl Lilly. And once I get all my credentials going, I'll expand that and you'll be able to find me a little bit further then. But don't hesitate, if you want to connect, I am available. I will listen to your story. I'd love to hear your baby's name and hear all about him, her, pregnancy, all of that. I'm here. I'm willing. So don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you so much, Sibyl, for sharing your story with us. I know that the listeners who've been through similar experiences will definitely be blessed.
Well, thank you for having me. I just love being in this space and I love what you're doing. So
thank you for listening to today's episode. For show notes, go to sistersinloss.com. To stay connected with us and join the Sisters in Loss community and receive my weekly newsletter, please go to sistersinloss.com/newsletter. That is sistersinloss.com/newsletter. Please rate and review this episode, and I will talk to you next week.